I want to tell you about the day my niece got married, and how a single moment at the reception told me everything I'd been too proud to admit for 23 years. It started with a seating card. My name, handwritten in gold ink, placed at table 11, near the back, beside the coat rack and the emergency exit. I stood there holding that little card, and I thought about the morning I drove 4 hours to Atlanta with a check for $40,000 in my breast pocket, so this wedding could happen at all. But before we go any further, tell me in the comments where you're watching or listening from today. I read every single one, and I have a feeling some of you are going to know exactly what I'm talking about before I'm halfway through. My name is not important. What is important is that I raised my niece, Adrian, from the time she was 9 years old. My brother Leland, her father, was what our mother used to call present in body and absent in spirit. He was there for the holidays when he remembered. He was there for the good news when it was worth celebrating. He was not there for the electricity bills or the school supply runs or the Tuesday nights when Adrian sat at my kitchen table and cried because she didn't understand why her father always had something better to do. I never badmouthed Leland to her. I want to be clear about that. I was raised to believe that a man handles his business quietly, without needing an audience. So I handled it. I took Adrian in when she was 9, and her mother, my sister-in-law Patrice, passed from a stroke that nobody saw coming. I was 51 years old, divorced, living alone in a house in Decatur, Georgia that had 3 bedrooms and nothing in 2 of them. I had just retired from 30 years with the Postal Service. I was supposed to travel. I had a list. Instead, I enrolled a 4th grader in Snapfinger Elementary and learned how to braid hair from a YouTube video at 11 o'clock at night. Leland sent money sometimes. Not often and not much, but sometimes. He'd call on her birthday, if the time zones lined up right. He moved around a lot, Tennessee, then Nevada, then back to Tennessee again. He always had a reason, always had something cooking, some deal, some opportunity, something that was just about to come through. Meanwhile, I was the one at the parent-teacher conferences. I was the one sitting in the bleachers at the track meets, in the rain, with a poncho I bought at CVS because I forgot to check the weather. I was the one who stayed up until 2 in the morning helping Adrian fill out her FAFSA application, because the deadline was the next day and she'd waited too long and was too embarrassed to ask for help until she had no other choice. She got into Spelman. Full ride minus $7,000 a year. I covered the $7,000 every year without being asked. When she graduated, she hugged me so hard I felt it in my back for a week. I still think about that hug sometimes. She met her fiancé, a man named Corbin, at a law firm where she'd started working as a paralegal. He seemed decent enough, steady job, steady eyes. His family was from Savannah, old money in the quiet way, the kind of people who didn't mention it because they didn't have to. His mother, a woman named Eugenia, ran their family the way a general runs a battalion. Not loud, but nothing moved without her say. The engagement party was at Eugenia's house. I drove up from Decatur in my good slacks and brought a bottle of wine I didn't know enough to know was wrong for the occasion. Adrian introduced me to the room the way you introduce a favorite teacher. Warmly, briefly, and then you move on. She introduced Leland differently. He'd flown in from Nashville, leather jacket, silver watch, smile like he'd just remembered how to use it. She held his arm when she introduced him. She said, "This is my dad." Just like that. 2 words. No qualifier. I watched it happen from across the room. I was standing near the fireplace holding my wrong wine. I didn't say anything. I told myself it was her night and she could define her family however she needed to. I believed that because I wanted to. The wedding planning started about 8 months before the date. Adrian called me one evening, excited, talking fast the way she does when something has her full attention. The venue was a plantation-style estate outside of Athens. Dinner for 200. Flowers she'd been dreaming about since she was a teenager. A band, not a DJ, because Corbin's family had opinions about that kind of thing. The budget was significant. Corbin's family was covering half. Adrian asked if I could help with the rest. I asked how much. She told me. I was quiet for a moment. Then I said yes, because that's what I'd always done, $40,000. I'd been saving since I retired, carefully the way my father taught me, a little every month into an account I didn't touch. That account was for emergencies and important things. I decided this was an important thing. I wired the money in 2 installments and didn't mention it again. Leland found out somehow. He called me about a week later, voice warm, a little too warm. He said he appreciated everything I'd always done for Adrian. He said she was lucky to have me. He said it the way people say something when they want credit for acknowledging a thing they've done nothing about. I thanked him and got off the phone. The morning of the wedding, I got dressed in my hotel room in Athens, navy suit, the one I bought for my cousin's funeral 3 years ago and hadn't worn since. I stood in the mirror and straightened my tie and told myself this was a good day, a celebration. I'd helped make this happen. Adrian's bridesmaid, a girl named Kezia I'd met twice, knocked on my door at 9:15. She said Adrian wanted to talk to me before the ceremony. I followed her down the hall thinking it was nerves, something I could talk her through. Adrian was in the bridal suite. She looked beautiful in a way that made my chest hurt a little, because she looked like Patrice, her mother, in a way she didn't usually. She hugged me, and then she stepped back and she said, "Uncle Henry, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be okay with it." I already knew. Somewhere in the base of my stomach, I already knew. She said Leland wanted to walk her down the aisle. That Corbin's family had a traditional view of these things. That Eugenia had gently but clearly communicated that it would mean a lot for the biological father to do the honor. That Adrian hadn't known how to say no to everyone at once. She said, "You understand, right? You know how much you mean to me." I looked at her face. She was asking me to make it easy for her, and the part of me that had been making things easy for her for 23 years wanted to do exactly that. Open my mouth, say of course, squeeze her hand, send her off with a smile. Instead I said, "I understand." 2 words. I let them do the work. She exhaled. She hugged me again, tighter this time, the way you hold something when you're relieved it didn't break. I patted her back and stepped out of the room and walked slowly down the corridor to find my seat. Table 11. I sat down. I arranged the napkin in my lap. I watched 200 people fill a room that I had helped pay for. I watched flowers I had helped choose get admired by people who didn't know my name. I watched Leland walk my niece down the aisle in a suit that cost more than his rent, beaming like a man who'd been present for every difficult morning, every science project, every 3 a.m. asthma attack, every broken heart that needed sitting with. He had not been present for any of those things. I sat at table 11, and I let the ceremony happen around me the way weather happens, not at you, just around you, indifferent to where you're standing. At the reception, Leland gave a toast. He talked about Adrian's spirit, her strength, her laugh. He said he was the proudest father in the room. The room applauded. Adrian cried. Corbin put his arm around her shoulders. Eugenia nodded from the head table like something had been confirmed. I picked up my glass and I set it back down without drinking. Later in the evening, Adrian made her way to my table. She was glowing, a little flushed from dancing, happy in the way a person is happy, when everything they planned actually worked. She leaned down and hugged me from behind. She said, "Thank you for everything. I mean it. Thank you." I nodded. "Thank you." I nodded. I smiled. I asked her to enjoy her night. She moved on to the next table. I drove back to Decatur the next morning, checked out of the hotel at 6 before most people were awake. I didn't stop for breakfast. I drove straight through on I-20 with the radio off, and the windows cracked and the early October air coming in cold and clean. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that. I am 63 years old, and I have buried a brother and a mother and a marriage, and I know the difference between grief and clarity. What I felt on that drive was clarity, the kind that doesn't feel good but feels true. I had made myself necessary without making myself matter. I had confused showing up with being seen. I had spent 23 years investing in something and never once asked what I was owed in return. Not money, not credit, just acknowledgement. Just the basic human recognition that I had been there. I got home around 9:30, made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Adrian used to do her homework, where we used to play Scrabble on Sunday afternoons when she was in middle school, where she used to eat her cereal in the morning and complain about the bus schedule. I sat there and I thought about $40,000. I thought about the $7,000 a year for 4 years of Spellman. I thought about braces and track shoes and the car I helped her buy when she got the paralegal job. Not because I was keeping score. I wasn't, but because the numbers told a story that the seating chart had already illustrated, and I needed to be honest with myself about what that story said. By noon, I had made 2 decisions. I called my financial advisor first. His name is Warren, and he's been managing my retirement accounts for 11 years. I told him I needed to review my estate plan. I told him I wanted to make some changes to the beneficiary designations on my accounts and my life insurance policy. He said he could see me Thursday. I said Thursday was fine. Then I called a man I know from church, a retired attorney named Spencer, who handles estate work on the side for people he trusts. I told him the same thing. He asked if I was all right. I told him I was clearer than I'd been in a long time. He said he'd have documents ready by the end of the week. I didn't call Adrian, not that day, not for several weeks. She noticed eventually. She texted on a Sunday, casual, the kind of text you send when you've been meaning to reach out and finally remembered. "How are you?" "Hope you're good," she added a little sun emoji. I answered 2 days later. "Fine, thank you. Hope married life is treating you well." She called the following Tuesday. I let it ring. She called again Thursday. I answered. She said she'd been thinking about me. She said she felt like something was off between us. She asked if I was upset about the wedding. I told her I wasn't upset. I told her I was reevaluating. She asked what that meant. I said it means I've been thinking about what our relationship actually looks like when you take away the things I provide. I said it as calmly as I'd say anything, not cold, not resentful, just honest. She got quiet in a way that wasn't comfortable quiet. Then she said, "Uncle Henry, you know your family." "I know what I've been told," I said. "I'm paying attention to what I've been shown." She didn't have an answer for that. I could hear her breathing. I could hear, faintly, Corbin's voice in the background saying something I couldn't make out. I thought about Leland at the podium, hand on his heart, proudest father in the room. I told her I loved her. I told her I needed some time to think. I ended the call. Spencer had the documents ready Friday. I went to his office in the afternoon, sat across from his desk the same way I'd sat there when I redid my will after my mother died. He walked me through everything. My retirement accounts, my life insurance, my savings, everything had been going to Adrian. I changed it. I split things 3 ways: my church, the Spillman Scholarship Fund, and my cousin's daughter, Imani, who is 12 years old and already showing the kind of quiet determination that deserves to be nurtured by someone who will actually be there to see it. I drove home feeling something I couldn't quite name at first. Lighter, maybe. But lighter in a way that wasn't loss. More like when you set down something you've been carrying so long you forgot you were carrying it, and your arms don't know what to do with themselves, but after a minute they figure it out. Leland called in December. I hadn't heard from him in months. His voice was easy, practiced, the way it always was. He said Adrian had talked to him. He said he hoped there were no hard feelings. He said family is family, and these things have a way of working themselves out. I listened for a while. Then I said, Leland, I raised your daughter for 23 years. I don't need to explain anything to you. He started to say something. I told him to take care of himself. And I hung up. In January, Adrian came to see me. Drove from Atlanta on a Saturday morning without calling ahead. She knocked on the door, and when I opened it, she was standing there in a coat I recognized, one she'd had since her last year of undergrad, looking like she had something she'd rehearsed and wasn't sure she still believed. I let her in. I made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table. She told me she'd gone through her old emails. She said she found the tuition payment confirmations I'd forwarded her every year. She said she'd never really added them up before. She said she looked at the numbers, and then she sat on the floor of her home office and didn't move for a while. She told me she didn't know about all of it, that some of it she'd been told was a scholarship extension, that she hadn't known to ask. I believed her. I want to be clear about that. I believed her. She said she should have stood up for me at the wedding, that when Eugenia made her preference known, Adrian should have said, "This is the man who raised me, and that means something, and we will find a way to honor both." She said she knew that now. She said she didn't know how to say she was sorry in a way that was big enough. I told her sorry doesn't fix it, but it's a place to start. She nodded. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup the way she used to when she was a teenager, and the morning was cold. She looked around the kitchen like she was cataloging it, the table, the window, the hook by the back door where I keep my keys. She said, "This is the place I grew up." "Yes," I said. "I forgot how much of my life is in this room." I didn't say anything to that. I just let it be true. We didn't resolve everything that morning. We weren't going to. 23 years of tangled expectations don't unwind over one cup of coffee, and I wasn't interested in pretending they did. But something shifted. Not back to where it was. That place was gone, and I didn't want it back. Somewhere new. Somewhere that felt like two people deciding to be honest instead of comfortable. She hugged me at the door before she left. Long enough to mean something. I watched her car back out of the driveway and disappear down the street. Then I went inside and washed the cups and put them away. These days I keep a different kind of morning. I wake up early, walk the neighborhood before the traffic starts, stop at the gas station on Columbia Drive for a coffee that is too strong and costs 99 cents and tastes better than anything I could make at home. I sit on the bench outside and watch the street come alive, and I don't feel like I'm waiting for anything. I've been mentoring 2 young men at my church, both of them in their 20s, both of them without much by way of fathers. We meet on Wednesday evenings in the fellowship hall, and I help them with their resumes, their budgets, the practical business of becoming men that nobody teaches you if nobody's paying attention. It's not much, but it's mine. It means something because I decided it means something, not because someone assigned it to me. I think about Adrian. I still do. We talk most weeks now, short calls, honest ones. She doesn't pretend everything is fine. I don't pretend I'm not still working through it. That honesty is harder than what we had before. But it's real, and at 63 years old, I've run out of patience for things that aren't real. Leland called again in the spring. I answered this time. He talked for a while. I listened. When he was done, I said, "I'm glad you're doing well." And I meant it. Carrying a grudge against Leland would be like being angry at the rain for being wet. He is who he is. He has always been who he is. The mistake was mine for not seeing it sooner and adjusting accordingly. There's something I want to say to you, because I think some of you listening have been exactly where I was, or you're there right now. When someone tells you that you're family, pay attention to what that word costs them. Some people use it the way they use a coupon, only when there's something to be gained, tucked away the rest of the time. The ones who mean it say it with their presence, not just their mouth. They save you a seat. They don't need to be reminded that you exist. If you have been the one showing up, paying the bills, sitting in the rain at the track meet, staying on the phone at midnight, doing all the things that nobody notices until they need to be done again, I want you to hear this. You are not obligated to keep funding an account that nobody plans to pay back. You are not required to keep shrinking so that someone else's absence can look like presence. Taking up space in your own life is not selfishness, it is survival. And sometimes the most honest thing you can do is stop making it easy for people to overlook you. Not out of anger, not to punish anyone, just because you finally decided that what you bring to a room deserves a seat at the table. Front row, center, no negotiation. Thank you for listening. Share your thoughts down in the comments. I truly value every voice and every story. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And make sure you're subscribed to Voices of Uncle Henry, because we're just getting started.